ever pay your employees to quit.
Yeah. It sounds absolutely backwards, doesn't it?
Completely.
Yeah.
Like, why would you ever do that? It feels like a recipe for disaster.
Right. But that's exactly what Tony Hsieh did. You know, the visionary guy behind Zappos.
The Zappos, the online shoe giant.
The very same. And this wasn't just some weird one-off experiment he tried. It was like a core policy. It flew in the face of pretty much all conventional business thinking.
And yet, they were massively successful. Didn't Amazon buy them for something crazy?
Absolutely. A staggering $1.2 billion back in 2009. And here's the really wild part, the core of what we're digging into today.
Right.
That empire. It wasn't really built on, you know, the usual stuff, aggressive marketing, cutting costs, typical growth hacks.
So what was it built on then?
It was built on this radical belief that happiness, genuine happiness, could actually be a business strategy.
Happiness as a strategy.
Yeah. And that serving people, both customers and employees, with what he called a relentless heart, wasn't just like a nice thing to do. It was the key differentiator, the secret sauce.
That definitely challenges how most businesses operate. Usually it's profit first, right? Or market share.
Exactly. Product, margins, growth.
Yeah.
That's the typical focus. Tony Hsieh flipped it. He started with the intangibles, human connection, well-being, actual honest-to-goodness service.
Okay, so that's what we're doing today. This is our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack the psychology behind that bizarre pay-to-quit policy. Like, what was really going on there?
Why pay people to leave?
Exactly. But we're going bigger than that, too. We want to explore the 6 foundational strategies that really made Tony Hsieh such a visionary leader.
Yeah.
We've got some great source material here, really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, we're going to get deep into it, pull out those insights for you. It's really a look into a different kind of capitalism, maybe. One where people and purpose are treated as, like, core assets.
Not just cogs in a machine.
Right. Not just means to an end. So maybe let's start at the beginning. How Tony Hsieh himself kind of redefined his whole relationship with money. This was way before Zappos, actually.
Okay, let's set the scene. It's 1998. The dot-com boom is absolutely roaring.
Peak bubble time?
Peak bubble time. And you've got this 24-year-old entrepreneur, Tony Hsieh. He just sold his first company, Link Exchange, to Microsoft.
And not for pocket change.
No kidding. $265 million. I mean, imagine that at 24. That's the dream, right? The big tech exit, instant financial freedom, success with a capital S.
It really was the quintessential Silicon Valley story. Hit the jackpot. But what's so interesting and what our sources really highlight is what happened next.
Which wasn't what you'd expect.
Not at all. Despite having all this money, this freedom, he felt this profound sense of, well, emptiness.
Emptiness, after making $265 million.
Yeah. He admitted it later. He said something like, I thought selling Link Exchange would make me happy. It didn't. The excitement wore off super fast. Apparently, the company didn't even feel like his anymore. The culture had shifted way before the sale.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't just the money.
He said, it wasn't fun anymore. It wasn't inspiring. It was just business, which for him clearly wasn't enough.
That's quite a realization at 24. After a massive success, it suggests success wasn't just the number in the bank account.
Exactly. This whole experience was a huge catalyst for him. It forced him to question that standard definition of success, the one that's all about financial gain. He'd built something successful by all external measures, but
he didn't believe in it anymore. It didn't bring him joy.
Precisely. It was a massive philosophical turning point. He basically walked away not just from a company, but from an entire definition of success that felt hollow to him.
So he started asking bigger questions.
Fundamental questions, like, what if money isn't the main goal? What if joy, connection, meaning? What if those are the real metrics? He was really digging deep into what a business could be. Could it actually make people happier?
And that thinking, that questioning, became his guide, his compass for everything that came after.
Absolutely. It became the bedrock philosophy for Zappos. He found Zappos in 1999, first as an investor. He didn't just see an online shoe store.
What did he see?
He saw possibility, a chance to build something radically different, a company where, and this was his vision from early on, people came first, culture was sacred, and happiness wasn't just a nice side effect, but the actual mission.
That's a pretty extraordinary vision for a company selling shoes online, especially back then.
Right. And it came directly out of that disillusionment with Link Exchange. Yeah. His personal lifestyle totally reflected this shift too. Our sources always mention this. He wasn't living like a flashy tech millionaire.
No yachts and mansions.
Nope. T-shirts, cheap food. He famously rented out rooms in his apartment, not even for the money, but just for the experience, the connection, having different people around.
So it wasn't about being frugal, like saving money.
Not in the usual sense. It was about intentionality. His life wasn't driven by chasing wealth or showing it off. It was driven by purpose, by wanting experiences and connections.
A life rich in moments, not just dollars.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that whole belief system, that deep intentionality, flowed directly into how Zappos operated. Customer service is the classic example. It wasn't a department tucked away somewhere.
Everything.
It was the entire company's philosophy. Profits weren't just, hoarded or paid out. They were deliberately reinvested back into the team culture, into funding spontaneous acts of kindness for employees, into creating these moments of surprise for customers.
Because they were literally trying to deliver happiness, not just shoes.
That was the phrase he used.
Yeah.
Delivering happiness.
Yeah.
That became their brand. His core belief was crystal clear. True wealth wasn't measured by net worth, but by impact.
That's a powerful way to think about value.
And he lived by it. His favorite quote, the one Zappos really embodied, was that Maya Angelou one. People may not remember what you said, they may not remember what you did, but they will always remember how you made them feel.
Wow.
That feeling, that emotional connection, that was the real currency Zappos traded in. It just flips the whole business model upside down.
It really does. So looking back, that journey from Link Exchange, the big money exit to finding Zappos, it was a huge learning experience for him.
Almost spiritual, in a way. You could say his first company made him rich, but his second one, Zappos, made him wise. He learned that money without meaning is just empty.
And maybe that meaning needs real human connection to sustain itself.
I think so. And that's a huge takeaway for anyone listening, right? Thinking about your own career, your financial goals, what's the real win? For Tony, it wasn't the sale price. It was designing a life and a company that felt genuinely joyful, human, and true to his values.
It really makes you think, what is your money for? Status, or something deeper like joy and connection. That's the question Tony grappled with.
And ultimately answered in a really unique way.
Okay, so that personal shift about money was huge. But how did that translate into a practical career strategy? You mentioned he wasn't just climbing ladders, he was building ecosystems.
Yeah, that's the term our sources use. He wasn't focused on his own individual climb. His approach was about creating these environments, ecosystems, where people, creativity, and crucially, those values we just talked about, could just thrive naturally, almost organically.
That's a very different mindset from just, getting the next promotion or growing market share.
Totally different. It's about cultivating the right conditions for everyone to flourish together. And it's interesting, he didn't even plan to be CEO of Zappos at first. He was an investor.
Right, he stepped in later. Why?
He felt he needed to protect the culture he envisioned. It wasn't a power grab. It was about safeguarding this idea he believed in, this different way of doing business. And he asked this really radical question right at the start.
Which was?
What if customer service was our entire business model? Not just a part of it, the whole thing.
That's bold. Most investors stepping into a CEO role would be focused on cutting costs or boosting sales immediately.
Exactly. But his experience at Link Exchange taught him something crucial, that the customer experience could be the ultimate strategic asset, not just a cost you have to manage.
So while everyone else in the dot-com era was burning cash on banner ads,
Zappos was investing almost everything in the experience after you clicked buy. He had this intuition that if they could create just one amazing, memorable interaction for a customer,
that customer becomes a fan for life and tells everyone.
Precisely. They wouldn't just come back, they become unpaid evangelists.
Right.
Word-of-mouth marketing powered by genuine delight. Way more effective than any ad campaign.
And they really leaned into this. The policies were legendary, weren't they?
Absolutely counterintuitive. Free shipping both ways. No hassle returns.
And that crazy 365-day return policy. A full year.
An entire year. And the call center. That was the heart of it. Reps had no scripts, no time limits on calls.
I heard about that. Didn't someone have like a 10-hour call once?
The story is legendary. Over 10 hours with one customer. Now think about that from a standard business perspective.
Yeah.
That's horrifically inefficient, right? A massive cost.
Total waste of resources, most would say.
But Tony saw it differently. He famously said, the product wasn't shoes. The product was trust.
Ah, that's a powerful reframe. Investing in service is investing in trust.
Exactly. Unshakable loyalty. Brand equity that pays off for years. That's why they refused to outsource the call center, even though it would have saved a ton of money. That direct human connection was non-negotiable.
And everyone got trained in the values, not just sales tricks.
Everyone. Warehouse teams, engineers, accountants. Extensive training in the core Zappos values. It was about building a shared culture, a shared way of being.
And clearly it worked. Didn't they hit $1 billion in sales pretty quickly without much traditional marketing?
By 2008, yeah,
Hmm.
over $1 billion in gross merchandise sales. And it was largely driven by repeat customers and word of mouth. Proof that the model, this human-centric model, could deliver massive financial results.
It's amazing evidence. Prioritize the human experience, and your customers basically become your marketing department.
It frees up so much resource. And internally, he was just as bold. The hiring strategy. It wasn't just about skills on a resume.
It was about cultural fit.
Huge emphasis on cultural fit. Maybe even more important than specific skills. His thinking was, you can teach skills, but you can't really teach core values or attitude.
Which brings us back to that famous offer, the pay-to-quit policy. Explain that again.
Okay, so new hires go through weeks of really intensive training. They get fully immersed in the Zappos culture, the values, how everything works.
Right. Deep dive into the Zappos way.
Exactly. And then at the end of this period, Zappos makes them an offer. Usually it was around $2,000, though the amount varied over time. They offer them this money to just walk away.
Just leave after all that training.
Yep, the message was basically, hey, if this isn't really for you, if your heart isn't in it, no hard feelings, take the money and go. No shame.
It still sounds bonkers, like setting money on fire. But most people didn't take it.
Right. The vast majority stayed. And that was the genius of it. The real purpose wasn't to get rid of people. It was to deepen the commitment of those who stayed. It forced a moment of choice.
A self-selection process.
A powerful one. It sent a super clear signal. This isn't just a job. This is a tribe, a family, a movement. It acted as this incredible filter for alignment. If you turned down the money, you were saying, I believe in this. I'm all in.
It demonstrated how much Zappos valued that belief, that commitment. It wasn't just about punching a clock.
Absolutely. So his idea of building assets wasn't just financial capital. It was human capital, yes, but specifically aligned human capital. Deep belief was the asset.
Get the culture right, build that committed team, and the rest follows profits, innovation, everything.
That was the core belief. He wasn't aiming to be the biggest. He wanted Zappos to be the most loved.
And that commitment to culture was so strong even when Amazon came calling.
Right, the $1.2 billion acquisition in 2009. Huge deal. But Tony negotiated something extraordinary.
The cultural autonomy clause.
Exactly. Zappos would continue to operate independently, maintaining its unique culture. That was almost unheard of in an acquisition of that size.
So he didn't just sell for the money, he sold for protection.
Protection of the culture. He knew the culture was the business. It was the irreplaceable asset. He essentially sold the company to save its soul.
That's incredible foresight. Building a business that scales belief. Belief in people, kindness, the idea that heart and success can go hand in hand.
That was the ultimate asset. Intangible, maybe, but worth billions. It showed that culture isn't just some soft HR thing. It's a hard strategic advantage, a moat, something you can and should protect fiercely.
Okay, so let's zoom right into the day-to-day. What did this culture actually look like? If you walked into Zappos headquarters back then, what would you see? Our sources paint a pretty wild picture.
Yeah, it wasn't your typical quiet gray cubicle farm, that's for sure. It was vibrant, genuine, unscripted joy. That's what comes through.
Like actual fun at work.
Actual fun. Handwritten notes and posters everywhere, teams erupting in spontaneous applause for something cool someone did. Actual laughter coming from the customer service area because people were enjoying connecting with customers, not just rushing through calls.
It sounds like it wasn't faked or forced corporate fun.
Exactly. And our sources stress this. Tony wasn't big on rigid rules. He didn't hand down commandments, but he believed deeply in rituals.
Rituals, not rules. What's the difference?
Rituals are things you do together that reinforce the values. They're about shared practice, encouraging connection, and authentic expression. Rules are just things you're told not to do.
Got it. And one of those foundational rituals was that crazy offer we talked about, paying people $2,000 to quit.
That legendary policy. On the surface, it looks like a huge waste, train someone and pay them to leave. Makes no financial sense in the short term.
But the strategic thinking behind it was deep.
Totally. Tony understood something vital that most leaders miss or ignore. That just one person who doesn't buy into the culture, who's disengaged or cynical,
Can poison the well for everyone else.
exactly. That negativity spreads. It turns into apathy, resentment, dysfunction. It slowly kills morale and productivity. So instead of letting that happen slowly,
He created an upfront filter based on choice.
right, if you chose to stay, turning down the cash, you were consciously opting in. You were all in. And that clarity, that commitment from everyone who was there, our sources say it was priceless.
Worth way more than the few $1,000s paid out to those who left.
Absolutely. It prevented that slow bleed of disengagement. It was a genius way to ensure alignment and protect the cultural integrity from the start, a short-term cost for a massive long-term gain.
So it identified and removed those potential cultural toxins before they could do damage. What other weird habits did they have?
Well, Tony famously refused to separate work and fun. He saw them as inseparable. That whole idea of a strict work-life balance was kind of alien to the Zappos way.
How did that play out?
Oh, in tons of ways. Employees decorated their desks however they wanted, sometimes really elaborate, crazy themes.
Yeah.
Costume days weren't just for Halloween, they just happened. Impromptu parades winding through the office.
Parades. Seriously?
Seriously. And then there was the famous culture book.
Yes, tell us about that.
Every year, they compiled this book written entirely by employees. Unfiltered thoughts about the company, the culture, what it was really like to work there. Some parts were funny, some were raw. All of it was incredibly honest.
And they shared this publicly, not just internally.
Shared it with anyone. Customers, vendors, potential hires. It wasn't a glossy PR brochure. It was a real, living document of their internal world. Talk about transparency.
It built this incredible sense of ownership, didn't it? Like the employees truly owned the company's identity and story.
It really did. And he made radical changes to the structure, too. Remember holacracy?
Vaguely. That was the thing with no bosses, right? Sounds like chaos.
Well, that was the idea. Eliminate traditional management hierarchy. Implemented in 2013. No job titles in the conventional sense, no layers of bosses, just self-managed teams or circles.
How did that actually work day to day? It sounds complicated.
It definitely had its hurdles. Our sources admit it was a steep learning curve. People used to clear reporting lines, suddenly had to figure out roles and responsibilities within these fluid circles. Decisions were made more collectively.
So the goal wasn't chaos, but...
Ownership,
Yeah.
distributed authority.
Yeah.
Tony believed that if you genuinely trust people to lead themselves, to take initiative without waiting for permission, they step up. They take more responsibility.
Fewer bottlenecks, maybe, but more need for self-direction.
Exactly. It required a high degree of proactivity from everyone. And yeah, the sources say not everyone agreed with this move. Some left. It wasn't for everybody, but for those who stayed.
They built something deeper.
A more authentic belonging is how one source put it. A stronger connection because they had real autonomy.
And Tony himself, his personal habits, they reinforced all this.
Completely. No fancy corner office. He didn't even have an office. He sat out in the open, right amongst everyone else.
Really? Just at a regular desk?
Yep, he'd jump in and answer customer emails himself sometimes. He threw tons of parties, but they weren't stuffy corporate events. They were about real connection, building relationships.
And he kept journals about happiness experiments.
Yeah, tracking little things. What small changes seemed to boost joy or collaboration? He was constantly tinkering, observing, nurturing the culture.
Treating it like a living thing, not a static policy document.
Exactly. A living organism that needed constant feeding. And the food wasn't just perks and bonuses, though they had those too. The real nutrients were trust, embracing weirdness and radical freedom.
So at the end of the day, success for him wasn't just the bottom line.
Not at all. It was, as our sources put it, waking up excited, going to bed proud, seeing his team become better human beings because of where they worked.
That's a different kind of success metric.
And it's contagious, right? That kind of genuine human success attracts people and inspires loyalty in a way that just chasing numbers never can. It's about purpose-fueling profit, not the other way around.
It really shifts the perspective, which leads perfectly into his broader life philosophy, because this wasn't just contained within Zappos, was it? His whole way of living was different.
Radically different from your typical tech billionaire. No private island, no fleet of sports cars.
Instead, he lived in an Airstream trailer.
Yep, a 240-square-foot Airstream, not parked in some Malibu beachfront spot either. It was in a trailer park he helped create in downtown Las Vegas.
Downtown Vegas. Not the Strip.
Right in the heart of the revitalization project he was funding. And this wasn't because he had to. He had billions. It was pure intention.
What was the intent?
Connection. He surrounded himself with this eclectic mix of friends, artists, entrepreneurs in this community they called Lamopolis, complete with pet llamas apparently, and a communal fire pit.
Lamopolis. Okay. It sounds deliberately unconventional, almost an anti-status statement.
It totally was. He believed that real fulfillment didn't come from stuff, but from proximity. Being physically close to people, having real conversations, real collisions, real connection.
Maximizing human interaction.
Exactly. And he saw the typical symbols of wealth, the huge houses, the gated communities, the corner offices, as things that create distance. And distance, for Tony, was the enemy.
The enemy of innovation and happiness.
That's how he put it. Barriers between people stifle creativity and genuine connection. And this wasn't just a personal quirk, it shaped every big decision.
Like with Zappos, when investors wanted him to change things.
Constantly. People were always pushing him, scale faster, chase higher margins, get ready for the IPO, play the standard corporate game.
But he pushed back, even if it meant leaving money on the table.
Consistently. If their vision didn't align with his values, he said no. His famous line was, "We're not trying to be the biggest, we just want to be the most loved."
Values over valuation, that's pretty rare.
Incredibly rare. It prioritized that emotional connection, the cultural soul, over just the numbers. Which brings us back to the Amazon deal again.
Right, where he insisted on keeping Zappos culturally independent.
Yeah, Amazon is this efficiency machine, right? They could have easily swallowed Zappos whole, optimized it, stripped its identity, but Tony fought for and got that guarantee of cultural autonomy, its soul untouched.
He saw the soul, the culture, as the most valuable asset worth protecting, more than the brand name or the customer list even.
Absolutely. It fits perfectly with his whole philosophy that the best decisions often don't make sense on a spreadsheet, they resonate on a deeper human level.
And he applied this outside Zappos, too, with his Vegas project.
Totally. The downtown project.
Yeah.
He poured hundreds of millions into revitalizing downtown Las Vegas, funding all sorts of local businesses, yoga studios, indie theaters, tiny startups.
Not for the guaranteed financial return, though.
Not primarily. He funded them because they created life. They made the area feel vibrant, hopeful, connected. For him, that community impact, that human flourishing, was the most valuable return. It was impact investing driven by connection.
He had that term collision density. What was that about?
Yeah, collision density. It's the idea that real innovation, real magic happens when different people, different ideas, different perspectives bump into each other unexpectedly. Serendipity.
So he preferred messy human environments over sleek, isolated ones.
Exactly. That's why he lives in the Airstream Park, why he focused on creating communal spaces downtown. He trusted serendipity more than strategy to spark creativity.
So fundamentally, every decision came back to a core question for him.
Pretty much. Does this bring more meaning into the world? If the answer was yes, he'd often go for it, even if it seemed risky or weird or broke every MBA rule.
He wasn't afraid to be unconventional if it felt right, value-wise.
His life wasn't conventional, but it was, as our sources say, fiercely intentional. He wasn't just passively successful. He actively designed his life and work around his deepest values. And that's maybe the most powerful form of leadership, living your values authentically, even when nobody's watching.
That authenticity really resonates. And this vision, it wasn't just about Zappos or his own life. He aimed even bigger, didn't he? He wanted to apply these ideas to an entire city.
Yeah, that was the next audacious step. After Zappos was stable post-Amazon, he turned his focus outward, to downtown Las Vegas. Not the Strip, but the older, somewhat forgotten blocks behind it.
And the goal wasn't just to make money developing real estate.
Far from it. This is the Downtown Project, launched around 2012. He personally committed $350 million of his own money. That's a staggering amount.
His own money. Wow, what was the vision?
He wanted to transform it into, as he put it, a city that makes you smarter. A place designed to maximize those collisions, spark creativity, and build a strong sense of community. It was like Zappos culture scaled up to the city level, a social experiment on a huge scale.
Yeah. How did he allocate that $350 million?
Very intentionally. Roughly $200 million for real estate, building the physical spaces, then $50 million specifically for small businesses, $50 million for tech startups, and another $50 million for education, arts, and culture.
Covering all the bases for a vibrant community.
Right. Recognizing that you need more than just offices and apartments. You need life, creativity, learning. And the way he invested it was key, not like a typical venture capitalist looking for the next unicorn.
He took chances on smaller, unproven ideas.
Exactly. Took chances on people with big dreams and small track records. He funded everything from coffee shops and bookstores to co-working spaces and playgrounds and, yes, even that famous community llama pen.
Okay, the llamas again. But the point was community first.
Build community first, profit second. That was the mantra. It completely inverted the usual power dynamic in urban development, which often prioritizes big corporations or luxury condos.
He saw power differently too, didn't he? Not top down.
Totally rejected it. He believed real influence, lasting change, comes from the bottom up, from street-level interactions, spontaneous connections, people supporting each other.
And he lived that by being there, in the airstream.
Right in the middle of it all, not directing from some high-rise office. He was on the ground, hosting marshmallow toasts at his fire pit, inviting people over. That line between his business investments and his social life just blurred. This was his life's work at that point.
Creating those happiness collisions he talked about?
Actively engineering them, designing spaces and events to get diverse people, artists, coders, chefs, investors interacting, sharing ideas. Container Park was a great example.
The place made from shipping containers.
Yeah. Fill the local shops, restaurants, public art. A really unique space designed specifically to make people curious, to get them talking to each other. A living lab for community.
It sounds like his approach to power was less about command and control and more about influence through presence.
Presence, generosity, humility, listening. He didn't dominate, he inspired. And not through flashy speeches, but through quiet consistency. Just showing up day after day, sitting beside people, not above them.
So people followed because they wanted to. They believed in the vision.
Exactly. They felt his genuine care. His power wasn't about controlling things. It was about creating conditions where people could thrive, empowering them to build their dreams within this ecosystem he was fostering.
Investing in others' potential multiplies the impact.
Way beyond what one person or company could do alone. By the time he passed away in 2020, the Downtown Project had supported over 300 small businesses, impacting thousands of lives.
That's a significant impact.
But the sources suggest the real legacy wasn't just the numbers, it was the emotional architecture. Building a community that actually believed kindness can scale, believed a city could be built on connection and purpose, not just transactions.
That's a powerful and maybe more lasting form of social impact. It goes beyond just economics.
It's transformational, proving that even in big, complex systems like cities, human well-being can be the driving force, creating a different kind of resilience.
So we've seen these principles in action at Zappos, in his personal life, in trying to build a city. But how do these ideals hold up when things get really tough, like during a major crisis?
That's the ultimate stress test, isn't it? And the 2008 global financial crisis provided exactly that.
Right. The whole economy was melting down. How did Zappos fare?
They were hit hard, like everyone else. Credit markets froze, sales slowed way down, cash got incredibly tight. It was a genuinely scary time for the company.
So typical CEO playbook in that situation. Layoffs, deep cost cutting, batten down the hatches.
That's the standard response, survival mode. But Tony, he did the opposite. He didn't double down on defense, he doubled down on values.
Doubled down on values during a financial crisis. How?
Instead of making top-down cuts behind closed doors, he did something radical. He invited the employees into the crisis.
Involved them in the decision-making.
Yeah. Held company-wide meetings, laid out the financial challenges with complete transparency. Here are the numbers, here's how bad it is, here are the tough choices we face. And crucially, he asked for their input, their ideas.
Wow, that takes guts. What was the reaction?
Extraordinary. Our sources describe how dozens of employees volunteered to take pay cuts. Others offered to reduce their hours temporarily.
Voluntarily.
Voluntarily. The team rallied, not because they were scared of being fired, but out of belief. Belief in the mission, belief in each other. It showed just how strong that culture of trust and mutual support really was. He'd built a place where people felt safe enough and committed enough to sacrifice together.
That's incredible. And what about customer service? Did they cut back there to save money?
That's the other crucial part. He absolutely refused to cut corners on customer service. While other companies were slashing return windows, adding fees, automating call centers,
Zappos kept the 365-day returns, kept the long call times.
Maintained it all, even when it cost more upfront. His logic was clear. In a crisis, trust is more valuable, not less. Maintaining that exceptional service would build even deeper loyalty that would last long after the recession ended.
Short-term pain for long-term gain. Investing in loyalty when everyone else was pulling back.
It was pure long-game thinking, prioritizing relationships over immediate P&L relief. And internally, this crisis became a moment to reinforce that long-term vision.
How so?
He kept reminding everyone, this isn't just about this quarter. It's about what kind of company we still want to be 10 years from now. Shifting the focus from just survival to long-term sustainability and identity.
Which frames that Amazon sale in 2009 in a slightly different light, too, doesn't it? We talked about it protecting culture, but maybe it was also a crisis strategy.
Absolutely. Our sources explicitly frame it that way, too. For Tony, the sale was not a surrender, it was a shield.
A shield against the financial storm.
Exactly. Amazon's deep pockets and stability provided the financial security Zappos needed to navigate the ongoing uncertainty. But again, the key was how he structured it, preserving that cultural independence, keeping the soul untouched.
So he used the crisis not to abandon his principles, but to find a way to protect them for the long haul, even if it meant selling the company.
Right. He understood that external shocks would always happen, but the internal clarity, the values, the culture was the thing that needed protecting above all else. It allowed Zappos to weather the storm without losing itself. He was playing the long game where trust and brand resonance ultimately win out over temporary market fluctuations.
It's a powerful example of leading with values, even under extreme pressure. And it seems like his personal philosophy mirrored this.
Completely. That quote, "The best businesses aren't built with the next quarter in mind. They're built with the next decade in heart." That sums it up. And his journals, apparently filled with those experiments in joy and tracking fulfillment over time, he lived to that compound interest of meaning and connection.
So the lesson from the crisis wasn't about cutting back, but about digging deeper into your core values.
I think so. In a world obsessed with speed and short-term results, Tony built something designed not just to succeed momentarily, but to endure, rooted in something deeper than just profits. And that resilience, that integrity under pressure, is a lesson for everyone.
Okay, we've journeyed through so much: Link Exchange, Zappos, Holacracy, Airstreams, llamas, downtown Vegas, surviving crises. What's the big picture here? What's the ultimate takeaway from Tony Hsieh's story for us?
I think fundamentally he forces us to redefine success itself. It's not just the destination, the exit price, the headlines. Success, in his world, is a feeling.
A feeling.
Yeah. Measured not by your net worth, but by, as the sources suggest, how deeply you've connected with others, how courageously you've lived your values, and how intentionally you've shaped your world. That's a profoundly human way to measure a life or a business.
And Zappos achieving that billion-dollar valuation. It wasn't despite the focus on happiness and culture, but because of it.
That's the core argument. The success came directly from the trust, empathy, and relentless care. Every decision, no matter how weird it seemed, paying people to quit, funding that llama pen, turning down investors who didn't get it, it all stemmed from that single philosophy. People first. Always.
He really demonstrated that joy can be engineered into a workplace, that culture can be scaled intentionally, and that kindness, it's not just nice, it's actually a powerful strategy.
A sustainable, powerful strategy. His story isn't ultimately about shoes or startups. It's about service. It's about soul.
And this fundamental belief that business doesn't have to be soul-crushing, that it could actually be a force for good.
A force for happiness, he believed. A platform not just for profit, but to genuinely enhance life, to foster connection and well-being.
So what can you, listening right now, take from all this? Maybe one thing is, it's okay to go slower if it means going deeper.
Absolutely. It's okay to build slower if you're building deeper.
Huh.
Resist the pressure for hypergrowth if it means sacrificing what truly matters.
And maybe it's okay to turn down what looks good on paper if it doesn't feel right in your gut. Trusting that inner compass, that value alignment.
Definitely. That intuition is crucial, and maybe the biggest one.
Yeah.
You don't have to trade humanity for success. In fact, your humanity might be the very reason you succeed. Your empathy, your ability to connect, your values.
Yeah.
Those are assets, not liabilities.
Tony didn't really leave a step-by-step playbook, did he? It was more like he left behind a feeling.
Exactly. A feeling, a permission slip almost. A sense that maybe, just maybe, it's okay to design a life and a company that feels as good on the inside as it might look on the outside.
So if anything we've talked about today, anything in Tony Hsieh's story, sparked something in you, just pause for a second. Don't just nod along or think, oh, that's interesting. Try to act on it.
Yeah. How does it apply to your world? Whether you're starting a company, leading a team, or just navigating your own career in life.
Ask yourself that question. What would it look like for me to lead with heart, not just hustle? What's one small step I could take?
Because Tony's life showed us. You don't need to be a CEO to deliver happiness. You don't need billions to build meaning.
You just need the courage to choose people over process sometimes, service over scale, values over vanity.
Those small choices add up.
They really do. So if this depth dive resonated, if it made you think, maybe share it. with a colleague, a friend, someone who might need to hear this perspective.
Yeah, spread the ideas. And leave us a comment. We'd love to know what part of Tony's journey hit you the hardest. What stood out?
Definitely. And of course, if you haven't already, hit subscribe. We've got many more deep dives like this coming up.
To wrap it up, maybe that famous Tony Hsieh quote, chase the vision, not the money.
The money will end up following you. Let's build lives and companies worth following.